Welcome to English Through Ideas podcast, where we learn English through powerful ideas. I want you to imagine something for a second. You are lying flat on your back on the floor, you're gasping for air, sweat is stinging your eyes, your vision is blurry, and you have this strange, sharp, kind of metallic taste in the back of your throat. What is happening to you?
Well, if I felt those exact physical sensations while sitting in my car during morning traffic, I would be absolutely terrified.
Right, you'd panic.
Oh yeah, I would think I was having a major medical emergency, and I'd probably call an ambulance right away.
But what if you felt those exact same things right after finishing a really intense, heavy workout at the gym?
Oh, then I'd feel fantastic. I would feel this deep sense of accomplishment. I'd be really proud.
Exactly. And that is the perfect entry point into our deep dive today. We are exploring this really fascinating conversation featuring the entrepreneur and thinker, Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah, it's a great one. The material covers some massive concepts about psychology, self-improvement, and human growth.
It does. And we're going to keep the English clear and simple today, avoiding confusing jargon so you can really easily grasp these big ideas. But that opening scenario really highlights our first big concept, which is the idea that the frame matters more than the picture.
Right, because the physical reality of your heart beating out of your chest,
Yeah.
it doesn't actually change.
No, not at all.
But the context, the frame you put around it,
Yeah.
completely dictates whether you experience joy or just sheer terror.
We are so glad you are joining us today to unpack all of this.
Yeah, it's great to have you listening. So let's unpack this concept of the frame a bit.
It is incredibly powerful because it reveals how deeply subjective our reality really is. We like to think we see the world objectively, but our brains are actually constantly filtering things through a contextual lens.
Let's bring this into the everyday world. Think about how Apple designs their retail stores. Before they came along, walking into a technology shop meant stepping into this chaotic jungle.
Absolutely. Wires everywhere. Yeah, wires everywhere. TVs stacked dangerously high on top of these cheap stereos. Awful fluorescent lighting. It just felt crowded and, well, cheap.
But Apple took a completely different approach. They realized that physical space, the actual real estate in the store, is expensive. So what did they do?
They did the exact opposite of everyone else.
Right. They took a single phone and they placed it on a beautiful, clean wooden table with 2 feet of entirely empty space on either side of it.
I've honestly never thought about it like that, but you are right. By purposefully surrounding the phone with emptiness, the frame is silently whispering to your brain, hey, this object is highly valuable.
Yes, it's the exact same psychological trick an art gallery uses, right, when they put a single painting on a massive white wall.
Right. The phone itself is just glass and metal, but the spatial frame justifies a much higher price.
And the research highlights another brilliant example of this. It's a classic blind taste test between Pepsi and Coca-Cola. When people were given both drinks in just plain cups without any branding, the majority of them actually preferred the taste of Pepsi.
Really? Just based on pure taste?
Yeah, the physical sensation on their taste buds favored Pepsi.
But let me guess. The moment the researchers made the Coca-Cola logo visible, everything flipped.
Correct. The story of the Coke brand, the history, the cultural weight, that frame literally changed how the liquid tasted in their mouths. Suddenly, they preferred Coke.
That is so wild.
It shows that our brains don't just passively receive information. They actively construct our experience based on the surrounding story.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more because I understand why a brain might be influenced by a clever marketing trick or a nice wooden table. But why are we wired this way? Why is human perception so easily manipulated by the frame?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to energy conservation. The human brain is a massive energy consumer, and from an evolutionary standpoint, wasting energy was dangerous.
So it's just trying to save battery, basically.
Exactly. The brain is constantly searching for shortcuts to reduce its workload. There is this classic biological study involving a mouse placed in a maze. The first time the mouse goes into this new environment, searching for a piece of chocolate, its brain activity is off the charts.
Right, because it's stressing out.
Yeah, it's sniffing every corner, scratching the walls, analyzing every shadow. The mental effort is enormous.
Because it has no frame of reference, right? It has to process every single piece of raw data.
Exactly. Now, put that same mouse back in the same maze a few days later. It glides effortlessly straight to the chocolate. And when they scan its brain during that second trip, the cognitive activity is incredibly low.
Oh, wow. So it's just coasting.
Yeah, the mouse is operating on pure autopilot.
Hmm.
And our brains operate on the exact same principle. If you had to deeply, objectively analyze every single object, person, and situation you encountered from the moment you woke up, your brain would practically overheat.
So we rely on frames like a logo or store layout or even a social cue to act as cognitive shortcuts.
Right. The frame tells us the story instantly,
Yeah.
saving us the hard work of figuring it out from scratch.
I see. So the frame is really just a biological energy saving mode, but this raises a huge question for me. If the frame is that powerful, and if our reality is heavily shaped by the stories we tell ourselves, can we just choose to change our deepest beliefs?
What do you mean?
Well, like if I am terrified of public speaking or I believe I am terrible at learning languages, can I just stand in front of a mirror and shout a new story until my brain believes it?
Ah, you are talking about the classic fake it till you make it advice, which is everywhere in the self-help world. But the insights from this material present a very different and honestly much firmer reality. You do not get to choose what you believe.
Wait, I have to push back on that. Isn't a belief just a thought you keep thinking? Why can't I just choose a better thought?
Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine I am holding a small silver coin in my hand. Let's say a 5-pence piece. You can see clearly that it's a 5-pence coin. If I offered you $1 billion right now to truly, genuinely believe in the bottom of your heart that it is actually a 2-pence coin, could you do it?
Well, I mean, I would certainly lie to you and say it was a 2 pence coin so I could take the $1 billion.
Of course you would. But could you actually force your internal reality to change? Even with $1 billion on the line, you couldn't do it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'd still know it was a 5 pence coin deep down.
Because beliefs are not conscious choices. They are the sum of the evidence we have accepted as true over our lifetime. Willpower is simply not strong enough to override evidence.
So if wishing doesn't work, how do we ever change a limiting belief?
You have to collide with new evidence. There is a fascinating story shared by Stephen Bartlett about his own journey. He went to a therapist to try and cure an intense addiction to eating sugar.
Okay, sugar addiction. A lot of people can relate to that.
Right. And under hypnosis, the therapist guided him back to a core childhood memory. He was a kid in school, and he felt this deep, overwhelming shame about his school lunchbox because it highlighted his family's financial struggles.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, and that shame formed a core belief about his need for control and comfort, which later manifested as eating sugar.
So what did the therapist do? Because she couldn't just delete the memory.
No, you can't delete evidence. Instead, she offered a new frame for that same evidence. She spoke to the younger version of him in that memory and helped him reinterpret the lunchbox.
Reinterpret it how?
She introduced the idea that his mother was working incredibly hard and doing her absolute best to provide for him out of love. By injecting new, compassionate evidence into that old situation, the belief shifted.
Wow.
The foundation changed, and his craving for sugar naturally fell away.
That is a beautiful way to look at it. It's just like a software update. You can't just yell at your computer to run faster. You have to download new code. For you listening to this, it is really worth pausing to ask, how are you framing your daily struggles? Are
Exactly.
you just trying to use willpower to wish your bad habits away? Or are you actively seeking out new evidence to prove a different story to yourself?
And this leads perfectly into our next area of focus. Because if we agree that changing a belief requires gathering new evidence, we have to acknowledge that gathering evidence requires taking action in the real world.
You have to actually try new things.
Yes. And taking action requires discipline.
Which brings up the eternal struggle, doesn't it? We know we need new evidence. We know what actions we should take. Why is it so incredibly hard to actually do the thing we know is good for us?
To understand this, we need to look at what the material calls the discipline equation. It is a surprisingly simple formula to explain human behavior. Discipline equals the subjective importance of a goal, plus the psychological enjoyment of pursuing it, minus the psychological friction, or the cost of doing it.
Okay, let's make sure that is crystal clear. Importance plus enjoyment minus friction. How does that play out in real life?
The author Simon Sinek gave a wonderful, very mundane example of this. He talked about the chore of taking his trash out at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I don't know anyone who enjoys that.
Nobody does. The psychological enjoyment of that task is practically zero. It is not stimulating at all. Meanwhile, the friction, the psychological and physical cost, is quite high. You are warm in your bed, it's freezing outside, and you have to handle dirty, smelly bags.
So if enjoyment is zero and friction is high, why on earth does the trash ever leave the house?
Because the subjective importance of the goal overrides the friction. Cynic knows that if he doesn't take the bins out, the city will fine him, or his kitchen will start to smell and attract pests.
Hmm.
The importance, the why, is heavy enough to tip the scales and make the behavior happen, despite the complete lack of fun.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let me challenge this a bit. If we have this equation and we clearly understand our why do we still procrastinate on the really important things?
That's the big question.
I mean, I might know that finishing a big work project is incredibly important for my career, so the why is huge. But I still find myself watching random videos on my phone instead. Are we just naturally lazy creatures looking for the easiest, most fun distraction?
That is perhaps the biggest psychological misunderstanding about productivity. Procrastination is not driven by laziness, and it is certainly not driven by the pursuit of pleasure.
Wait, really?
Yes, procrastination is a coping mechanism driven entirely by the avoidance of discomfort.
Avoidance of discomfort, not seeking fun.
Think about the last time you had to write a highly sensitive, difficult email. Maybe you had to apologize to someone or deliver bad news. It is a very emotionally heavy task. Suddenly, you look up and you are in your kitchen, scrubbing the oven or perfectly alphabetizing your spice rack.
Oh, I have absolutely been there. Suddenly the house must be spotlessly clean right this very second.
But scrubbing an oven is not fun. It is manual labor. You aren't doing it because it brings you immense pleasure. You are doing it because physical labor is psychologically less uncomfortable than the emotional vulnerability required to write that email.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Or consider the phone scrolling you mentioned. Notice when you actually pick up your phone, it is almost always the exact second your work becomes slightly confusing, boring, or frustrating.
Yeah, when I hit a roadblock.
Exactly. You aren't opening social media because the content is suddenly irresistible. You're opening it as an escape hatch to avoid the mild mental pain of feeling stuck or incompetent.
I mean, that completely flips the script. Procrastination isn't a time management problem. It is an emotional regulation problem.
Precisely. And realizing this gives you a tremendous advantage. The next time you find yourself procrastinating, instead of calling yourself lazy, stop and ask yourself, what specific psychological discomfort am I trying to escape right now?
That's a great question to ask.
Are you afraid the project won't be perfect? Are you feeling unqualified? Once you name the actual fear, the urge to hide in your spice rack usually disappears.
That is incredibly practical. So if we manage to stop avoiding our discomfort and we actually start taking action, how do we turn those isolated actions into lasting confidence? How do we build real self-esteem?
By obsessing over the tiny details. True self-esteem is built through invisible compounding.
The analogy in the material that really clarified this for me was the idea of brushing your teeth. If you decide to skip brushing your teeth for one single day, what happens? Absolutely nothing.
Right, your teeth don't fall out.
Exactly. Your dentist doesn't call you. There is zero immediate consequence. But if you stop brushing your teeth every day for 5 years, your teeth rot and fall out of your head.
It's the compound effect.
Yes, the results of these tiny, seemingly insignificant actions are invisibly compounding over time. They are building a trajectory either for you or against you.
Is the exact philosophy of marginal gains. There is a legendary story about Sir Dave Brailsford, who took over British cycling. He didn't come in and try to find one massive revolutionary change to make the riders faster.
No.
Instead, he looked for hundreds of tiny 1% improvements.
Things that seem almost ridiculous.
Very trivial things. They painted the inside of the team truck white so they could spot tiny specks of dust that might degrade the bike chains.
Wow.
They tested different massage gels to see which one promoted slightly faster muscle recovery. They even brought the athletes personal mattresses and pillows to hotels so they would get a 1% better night of sleep.
On their own, none of those things are going to win you a gold medal. I mean, a softer pillow doesn't make you a champion cyclist.
Not individually, no. But when you stack hundreds of those microscopic improvements on top of each other, it creates an undeniable psychological momentum.
Yeah.
The athletes look around and see a culture of absolute excellence in the smallest details. They start to embody that identity. They start to believe they are unstoppable. And that belief translates directly into their physical performance on the track.
But this compounding effect works in reverse too, doesn't it? There is a quote that really struck me. It's more socially acceptable to be our own biggest critic than our own biggest cheerleader.
What's fascinating here is how quickly we compound the negative.
Yeah, we break promises to ourselves constantly, and we say terrible things in our own heads that we would never dream of saying to a friend. How do we reverse that downward spiral?
Well, this is where we get to the core of self-esteem. The material argues that true self-esteem is directly correlated to the size and volume of the commitments you keep to yourself when absolutely no one is watching.
Why does it matter if no one is watching? Isn't doing the right thing in front of people still good?
It is, but doing it in secret is when you are updating your own internal database. There is a powerful story about the boxer Chris Eubank Jr. He was doing a brutal treadmill run, aiming for 10 miles. Around mile 9, his leg cramped up severely. He was in agony.
Ouch.
And here is the key detail. He was completely alone in the gym. No cameras, no trainers, no fans.
He could have hit the stop button. Nobody would have judged him because nobody would have known.
But he forced himself to limp through that final 10th mile. When asked why, he said that if he quit when no one was watching, he would let the demons in.
Let the demons in.
What he meant psychologically is that he would be gathering new evidence about himself. He would be proving to his own brain that he is the type of person who gives up when the pain gets high and the audience is gone.
Right.
And if he builds that identity in the empty gym, that is the person who will show up in the boxing ring when 50,000 people are watching.
It is about trust. Think of it like having a friend who always makes plans to meet you for coffee and then always sends a text canceling at the very last minute. After the 5th or 6th time, you simply stop trusting them. You stop believing their word.
Yes.
We do that to ourselves. If you set an alarm for 6 a.m. and you hit snooze every single day, you are teaching your brain that your word means nothing. You lose faith in yourself.
But the incredibly hopeful part is that you can rebuild that trust the exact same way. One small kept promise at a time.
So question for you listening right now. What is one tiny microscopic commitment you made to yourself today, and did you keep it? It doesn't need to be running 10 miles on a torn muscle.
No, not at all.
It could be reading one page of a book or drinking a glass of water before looking at your phone. When you keep that tiny promise, you are secretly compounding evidence in your own favor.
And if you keep compounding that evidence over months and years, you inevitably start moving toward mastery in whatever field you choose. But we have to look at the hidden social cost of that growth. Because as you evolve, the environment around you reacts.
Yes, the path to getting better isn't always celebrated. To explore this, I want to bring in a framework from the research that separates people into 2 categories: parrots and practitioners.
It is a brilliant distinction.
A parrot is someone who simply repeats what they hear. In our modern world, this is the person who reads a catchy, inspirational quote on social media, memorizes it, and repeats it at dinner parties to sound insightful. But they haven't actually lived the experience.
Right, they just talk.
Exactly. A practitioner is the opposite. A practitioner is someone who spends a decade in the shadows doing the boring, repetitive, unglamorous drudgery required to actually master a craft.
The material points to highly successful people, like the musician Fred again, or the comedian Jimmy Carr. We see them selling out massive arenas now, but we didn't see the 10 years they spent playing to empty rooms, driving long hours for zero pay, quietly building their skills from the ground up.
They weren't looking for a shortcut. There is a line that summarizes this perfectly. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. The parrots are constantly looking for the magic without the work. The practitioners know the work is the magic.
But choosing to be a practitioner often triggers a very painful phase of life that is referred to as the lonely chapter.
So what does this all mean? Why does getting better at something mean you have to be lonely? Shouldn't success bring people closer to you?
Not initially. The lonely chapter happens in the messy middle of your journey. Let's say you start keeping those small commitments we talked about. You start waking up early to study a language, or you focus deeply on your health. Your daily habits begin to change. Naturally, that means you might start staying in on a Friday night to read, instead of going out to the pub with the friends you've known for 10 years.
And those friends notice the shift. Sometimes they get defensive. They might make passive-aggressive jokes, asking if you think you are too good for them now. I think people often react that way, not out of malice, but because your discipline shines a light on their own lack of progress. It makes them insecure.
That is a very astute observation. People inherently fear someone who breaks away from the tribe's established norms, so you start to feel ostracized from your old circle. But the tragedy of the messy middle is that you haven't yet reached the level of success where you organically meet a new group of peers who share your newly elevated values.
You are suspended between two worlds.
Exactly.
It is like immigrating to a new country. You have said goodbye to your hometown, but you haven't made any friends in the new city yet. You are just sitting alone in your apartment, wondering if you made a terrible mistake. There is a quote from the musician Louis Capaldi that captures this isolation. After experiencing massive, sudden fame, he said, "Fame doesn't change you, it just changes everybody around you."
And we have to understand why this feels so terrible. From an evolutionary perspective, human beings required a tribe to survive. If you were kicked out of your hunter-gatherer tribe, you would literally die in the wilderness.
Yeah, you wouldn't last a day.
So our brains have evolved an alarm system. When we feel different or separated from our group, our brain hits the panic button.
It tells us we are in mortal danger. We assume we must be doing something horribly wrong because people are pulling away.
Exactly. But we want to reframe this for anyone listening. If you are going through a phase right now where you feel misunderstood, isolated, or lonely, simply because you are trying to elevate your life, whether that is starting a business, getting sober, or learning a new skill, that loneliness is not a symptom of failure.
No, it's completely normal.
Loneliness is sometimes the tax we pay for growth and complexity of mind. It means you are moving, you have left the comfort zone, and you are navigating the messy middle. If you can just keep compounding those small wins, there is a new tribe waiting for you on the other side.
It is a difficult bridge to cross, but an absolutely necessary one. This has been such a rich journey through these concepts. Let's take a quick look back at what we've unpacked today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by realizing that the frame matters more than the picture, and that to change a deeply held belief, we can't just wish it away. We have to actively gather new evidence.
We explored the discipline equation, discovering the incredibly relieving fact that procrastination isn't a sign of laziness. It is simply our brain trying to avoid emotional discomfort.
We talked about how building self-esteem is like brushing your teeth. It is about keeping tiny, compounding promises to yourself, especially when the room is empty. And finally, we looked at how walking the path of a practitioner often means surviving the isolation of the lonely chapter.
As we wrap up, I want to offer a new thought to leave the listener with, building on everything we just discussed.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
We just talked heavily about the pain of the lonely chapter. But what if we applied our very first lesson about the power of framing to that feeling of loneliness?
I like where this is going. How would we reframe loneliness?
Well, we established earlier that the brain's main goal is to save energy, and it panics when it loses its familiar shortcuts. So what if that heavy, sinking feeling you call loneliness isn't actually about missing your old friends at all?
What else would it be?
What if it is just your brain's biological alarm system ringing because you are in a new environment, building new habits, and it is being forced to burn extra calories to process the unknown?
Wow.
If you reframe loneliness not as a social failure, but just as the physical sensation of your brain doing hard cognitive work, does it lose its power over you? It is something to think about the next time you feel isolated on your journey.
That is a phenomenal reframe. Treating loneliness as just cognitive processing. Thank you for learning with English through ideas. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more ideas, more English, and more growth.